Hi there. On behalf of me and my crazy hair day today, I thought I would take the time that I had to record something because it's been a while and I keep coming across these professional speakers who go around to different venues, different organizations and schools and talk about things that I've been doing since my career started essentially. And I thought, I'm just gonna put myself out there and keep talking because you never know who you might impress upon, I guess, for lack of a better word. I think, as I said in a video from last year, that I want to just be raw about things, and as long as it comes from a place of grace and consideration and passion and with no intent of hurting anyone, then my thinking is it should be well received. Here's hoping. So without further ado, let's go down some rabbit hole today and where my ADHD brain takes me, and let's hope that passion just shines, because it's the beginning of the year, it's the beginning of the school year in Australia, and it seems different this year. We're dealing with lots of different complexities. We're noticing that the number of students coming through with speech and language difficulties or delays or disorders is on the increase. And I haven't looked into the research on why this could be. I have a couple of theories. Firstly, childcares and kindergartens are amazing at identifying these difficulties early and getting on early intervention, and the introduction of NDIS's early funding for global developmental delay, which, for those of you who are not aware of what that is, essentially it's 2 areas of development or more that may be delayed. My daughter, in fact, had that diagnosis because she wasn't crawling and she would just sit, and she wasn't eating properly. She had laryngomalacia. So we were able to qualify for the NDIS for early intervention. Truth be told, I worked really hard to get her up to speed, so in the end we didn't actually need the funding, which I'm glad for, that can go to other families who do definitely need that. But besides that, the other theory I have is that the COVID era definitely played a role in the way in which children see sounds, and that sounds bizarre, but we know that children learn sounds, not to read and write. That's a secondary skill. So we copy, in our early years, we copy the way in which the adults around us speak, or the people around us speak. So that would have been more difficult in the COVID era where many people were wearing masks. And also there's a big shift in the way in which people are accessing childcare and whether they're choosing to or not. And it's just a steady change where families are very busy nowadays. A lot of parents are both working and they may not have the same time or energy or even dedication to reading and exposing their children to language. So there's a few different things. Obviously, when you're talking about a disability, that's not something that is an environmental impact. That's something that's happening within the brain and the way in which it processes. And so the supports around help to support those disabilities. So I'm purely talking here about those sort of delay gaps that can be worked upon. Anyway, rabbit hole number 1 done. So amongst the year starting, I have been a little bit out of a loss of where to from here in my career, personally, professionally, because I am an innovator, which means I like to create things. I like to problem solve and look at something and work out how we can make it more accessible or more modernized or more appealing or more useful, whatever that might be. So my good friend and colleague Chris, who hopefully will appear on this at some stage if I can get him in front of the camera. Yes, Chris, I'm talking to you. We we're talking about what is the big picture goal. And one thing that I always hear and then, you know, make now a priority to challenge is when I hear adults or, you know, leaders, particularly in education, who say the phrase, school is not for everyone. And my challenge to that is, okay, but it's mandatory. And we know that in Australia and in South Australia, you have to attend school legally from the age of 6 until, you know, a certain, I think it's 16 or 15, and you have to get a parent's okay for that or a guardian. So it's not that easy to just not attend school. And if you have, you know, consecutive days in a row where you haven't notified the school of what's going on, that can raise alarms, and, you know, that will be looked into by the department, as it should be. So we have to ask ourselves then, how can we honestly say that school is not for everyone, but then make it mandatory? So we have a dilemma here, because school has to be for everyone. There has to be a school that is accessible for everyone. And so my barrier to this is, why isn't it for everyone? What makes it impenetrable for everyone? And I think that does come down somewhat to a secondary mindset, a secondary school mindset. So our high school, our years from 7 through to 12, because there is a process and a pathway, and there's lots of schools that have multiple different pathways, which are just absolutely fantastic. But there's still a mandated set of rules in order to finish your year 12. And I'm speaking here just from a South Australian perspective. Every state has a different set of rules. We're very lucky here in South Australia. Our certificate of year school completion, what we call our SACE, is the same certificate for all children or students, no matter which pathway they went. So if they are able to get a certain number of points through doing a vocational education training course, that counts towards their SACE. So they still get their SACE. Whereas I know in some other states, they are able to qualify, but then they get a different certificate, which is not the same as their peers, which from my perspective is not inclusion, to say, well, you didn't get it in the same way everyone else did, so yours is going to look different. I kind of think, well, why? Does it matter how we got to the end? Just that we did, and that we were successful in our own way, you know. So I challenge you, especially independent schools Queensland, to get out there and have a conversation with the Queensland Education Department, because I know that they do that, and I find that incredibly juxta to inclusion itself. And maybe you should have a look at the SACE system to see how they're doing it, because that process is fantastic. And what I love to see is that universities are starting to review the ways in which they make university accessible to all. When I was going through university, it was cutthroat. You were either academic or you weren't. And if you're not academic, tough luck, you can't go to university. But there is incredibly intelligent people around who may not be academic on paper, but you talk to them and the knowledge they have is just incredible, you know. Or I'm always challenged by things like group projects, because I understand the skill set to be able to work with others. But if you're someone who has a difficulty in social situations, for whatever reason that might be, and that may be something that you need to work through depending on the reasons for those things, to mandate that a task has to be done in a group, you know, seems a little, again, not inclusive. You know, obviously you need to produce genuine reasons for why you can't do certain things. But I believe that they're becoming far more inclusive on those things. And of course, the introduction of online learning is just incredible, because people can work from the comfort of their own space. You know, they can choose. So we're getting there, but we're still far behind, and I wonder why that is. We know that our literacy levels and our numeracy levels are continuing to either sort of stagnate or decline, and one, you know, I have to ask myself why that is, and there's certain things that I query, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I know for the new Australian curriculum that's been released, I'd love to know the reason for why something like cursive handwriting is still in the curriculum. What is it important for? I don't actually know, because as educators we are drilled in about the fact that we are teaching kids for jobs that don't even exist at this point. And I can tell you the amount of times that I put pen to paper is limited. I'm usually on a device using the computer or doing something like that. Not to say that writing isn't an important skill, because absolutely it is. But why cursive? I'm confused about why we would put that into the Australian curriculum as something that a year 3 student should be doing. And I would love to have feedback on the reasons for why, because I'm curious, genuinely curious. So that's sort of the first kind of rabbit hole, I guess, that I want to go down, because there is a need to ask these questions. And I guess, my goal in life is to hopefully, even if it's in a really small sense, be able to challenge the thinking, hopefully create adaptive change where people are moving with what we need to do to accommodate for students. And I use students, but I mean humans, because to me, when you say the word students, it's almost like an occupation. They come to school, they are a student here, that's their identity. And the reality is that they are a student, but they're also a human, and all humans are different and they learn in different ways. And I think the main priority of a school is for children or humans, these little miniature learning sponges, to walk away from school saying, I learned something today, or it was a great day, not I hate school and I don't want to be there. And I know there's many factors at play in, social issues and trauma and parenting and environment and financial stress and whatever else it may be. But my query is with all of those big players and those big things happening that happen external, what are we doing internally to provide what these little humans may never have access to if they don't have a school? So I don't essentially know where I'm going with this. I'm trying to start conversation, and there's a few factors where this rolls out of and into the next sort of conversation, which is, things about school being a business rather than being a place of learning. I plan to do a bit of investigation into the Swedish and the Norwegian countries and how they're doing education, because their results are quite good in comparison to us. And I want to know why. And I also want to make sure that the data that is being shared is not being skewed, because we know politics plays a big role in all things, especially when there's so much unrest going on across the world. And I guess I just want to have a conversation about what are we doing as adults in any life of a child, whether that's as a teacher or as a parent or as a caregiver or a grandparent, as an auntie or an uncle, or whatever it is you may be. How are we working to make sure the next generation does better than we have? And we can see this already taking place with our, future generations are coming through, and they're working to take care of the planet that we're in right now, because they're cleaning up the messes of the past, essentially. But then there's also that fine line of other areas of concern that are happening society-wide, and they're causing all sorts of, just people almost going to battle over what they're so passionate about, sometimes to the point where it's crosses a line of passion and it becomes aggression, and that determination becomes, you will believe what I believe or you don't exist anymore. So there's a whole balancing act that comes with interactions with our young people, and we as adults are the ones that are impressing upon them. And it doesn't matter how long or how deep your interaction is. Every time you interact with someone who is a child, they are a sponge and they're absorbing those interactions. So anyway, I don't want to make this too long because it's just another rant, and I plan to just rant whenever I feel like it, because I'm just so super hopeful that it starts a conversation. My dream in life is to be able to advocate in policy or in process to do with just something to do with children in general, whether it's education specific or it's broader than that, because my driving force is not to become popular or famous or any of that sort of stuff. It's to make positive change, and to know that when I leave this mortal plane, that I have left somewhat of a dent or a legacy in a positive way. And that's the only thing that I can hope for my children and for their children and for all the kids that are around, who are just doing this thing called life at the whim of the adults around them, sometimes amazingly. So anyway, I'll leave this for now. If you have any comments, even if you want to thrash me, go for it. I appreciate the passion that some people have. And let's be respectful people, where everyone's got an opinion on something, and it may always not resonate with what you say, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't at least hear it, and consider it before you go and decline it entirely, because that is a very closed-minded way of doing things. I'm working on that myself. Anyhow, so love to you all, and see you soon. Bye.